It is 9 a.m. on the dot. We're going to kick this off. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar series. My name is Ted Harris. I'm with the Pennsylvania Petroleum Association. We normally host at least one webinar a month. This month we actually have two. We've been doing, just with so much going on in the industry in the past couple months here, we've been adding more content to our presentations, and hopefully you're finding that valuable. For anyone that's joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. I know we have a bunch of our members that are on here that have joined us in the past, but before we get started, I would like to just go over a couple of housekeeping items. All of our attendees are going to be on mute for the duration of the webinar. With that being said, you can still ask questions in the GoToWebinar feature, and what we'll do once Danny gets through his presentation today, I will moderate those questions back to Danny and hopefully get you an answer. If for some reason we run out of time, or if you have something that's more of a one-on-one question for Danny, we'll absolutely connect you after the fact and make sure that you get an answer. With that being said, just to give a really light intro for this concept, the title today is all about you, your data, your capacity, your efficiency. We're obviously in a very unique position right now within the market, within the industry. There's organizations like Angus Energy that are really utilizing data and working with companies like yourself to just continue to look at ways as this is rapidly changing, almost on a day-to-day basis, it seems like sometimes, to just make sure that you're as efficient as possible as an organization, and trying to adapt the best you can in this ever-changing environment. So I will, with that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Danny Silverman with Angus Energy and let him kick this off.
Great, thanks a lot, Ted, and I appreciate the time to be able to present this to the Pennsylvania Petroleum Association, and from what I understand, a lot of other people online as well. This was a really fun webinar for us to put together, with the reason being that we've done this a few times, and each time before doing it, we sent an email out to all the people who had participated, for that matter, to all the members of the various associations, asking them some general questions, some specific questions for them to answer, which you'll see as we go on with this webinar. And they gave us the information back. And using that information, we were able to figure out what sort of recommendations we can give to become, as it says here, more efficient and use that data and use your capacity in the right way. So it really is that now that you share the information with us, which you did, there are a lot of people who are participating on here based on the list I saw that actually sent information back to us. It certainly makes a session better, because you can look at this and say, here's the info that you sent, what can we do with it? So today's agenda, we're going to look at this information that you shared with us and discuss, which we'll get more into, the difference between belief and reality. We see very often when we ask questions, where do you think you are? I think I'm at X. The answer is really you're at X plus Y or X minus Y. No fault of your own, but again, looking at the data more carefully helps you with that. You're going to learn about what you're doing. You're going to learn to see how you compare to certain things that the industry, your competition, your co-opetition is doing, which should help you as well. And in certain ways, when you look at the data, you will see that you're a little different than maybe what the benchmark data of your competition is. That's okay. The question is, what do you do with it? Things that you have in common, obviously, as well. And then most important, we want to go through, after going through those questions and giving you where people are, what are the actionable items that you can do to go ahead? And that's really what we're going to concentrate on, to understand how to develop operational efficiency through these actionable items. So these are the questions that we went through with you. What is your optimal delivery, your actual size, residential gallons, et cetera, et cetera. Asking you questions like, I would like to sell all my gallons, but I need fewer trucks. I would like to create excess capacity. Which direction do you want to go with it? But probably the most important, which we put in red of the questions, which we'll spend time as this webinar goes on, is what metrics are most important to your company. And we really did want to see, was there a commonality of what people were looking for when it came to your KPIs, your key performance indicators, your metrics, et cetera, It was fascinating to see that most were the same. That's good. And if you had the capability to optimize your deliveries, what approach would you take? So again, actionable items. What approach would you take if someone was able to help you understand the capability to optimize your delivery? So keep all those questions that you see here. I'll keep it on for another second or two just so you can read through them, but we're going to go through one at a time so you'll be able to see them, concentrating on the two that are in red. Okay, so industry data. As I said before, this comes from a lot of data from all different companies. We found that regardless of the size of the company, most of the information really was the same. 175 companies, some were oil, some were propane, most were both. Involved 1.3 million customers that we had looked at that they had done a delivery or more to, mainly residential. And to give you an idea of the low margin of error of everything that you're about to look at, the information that you'll see was based on over 1 billion gallons delivered. So that's a pretty high number. I'm not saying that to be impressive, that that's the amount that companies we work with, but more that when you see this data, it's hard to say that there's much of a margin of error knowing how big the amount of information is that we collected it from. Okay, so question number one, what is your optimal delivery, which was the first one. And here I just want to, I guess, explain first the word optimal. There are too many times when I speak to my clients and I say, what is the definition of optimal? And their answer is largest delivery. And that's just not the answer. The optimal delivery is delivering the most amount of gallons for the least amount of money. Okay, so it's very possible that 180 gallon delivery might be more optimal than 190, might be more optimal than 140. It all has to do with how you set things up. We will get to where we talk about cents per gallon delivered, which is really going to help you understand optimal. Okay, we'll start with, we're doing heating oil and propane. I'm not sure where the propane screen is first, but I know especially in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of people doing both. So we asked, what is your optimal delivery into a 500 gallon tank? You can see the range on the side, right? 191 to 237. Your answer was 290. Most people were in that 280 to 300 gallon range. That is correct, that's where the optimal delivery should be. Those who have tank monitors, obviously the optimal can go more to 320 to 340 even, because you're less worried about run out, etc., because you know exactly what's in the tank. I'm not saying that everybody should be worried about run out, but with the issues of K factor, especially since the pandemic and on, it's hard to figure out what to do without that monitor. So therefore, staying the 290 makes sense. What's interesting is when you look at what people are actually delivering to a 500 gallon tank, 80% were within that 191 to 237. What is going on? Okay, why is that happening? And we will get there, including what to do about it. Looking at the, and the average industry fill is about 216. So, a little crazy that, we're seeing here 290 is the right answer. Everybody came to it. The average fill is only at 216. The question is why? Again, the same thing on heating oil, 275 tank. We've all gone through this, 275. Maybe your usable is 250 or 255 or 245. Your optimal is going to be somewhere in the 180 range. The question is, why is the industry averaging about 146? What is going on? Why is that happening? Really, commercial's not going to be the answer. Worry about run out is part of the answer. But I think, again, a lot of it has to do with understanding the optimal. A lot of it has to do with that K factors are just not as good as they used to be. Okay, next. How many residential gallons do you deliver per year? Typical company was about 6.4 million, but understand there were companies as small as 1 million. There are companies as big as 25 million. And again, the results from the data you'll see and the recommendations that we give really do apply, whether you're delivering 1 million gallons or whether you're delivering 25 million gallons. It really does come down to the same thing. How many residential trucks do you have? We see an average of 20.7, but look underneath that, right? You see it goes from 5 to 33. And there were a lot of mom and pop shops, especially that I work with in Pennsylvania, that have 1, 2, or 3 trucks. Dad and son are on the trucks. Mom and daughter may be in the office. And I shouldn't even say that because I can't tell you how many companies we have now where the women are driving the trucks too, and more power to you. But it really depends. And the size is going to be interesting to look at also, because I would say most companies are looking at the amount of trucks they want is going to be enough to handle their peak in January and February, and maybe 10 to 15% more trucks. And that's going to make sense. Somebody that needs 8 in their peak is going to have 9 to 10 trucks. Someone who needs 15 is going to have somewhere around 17 to 18 trucks. And that kind of does make sense because a truck will go out. We do want to rotate our trucks every so often. We have the powerhouse truck that does 750,000 gallons. We have old Bertha that may go out 2-3 times a year. So we do understand, and therefore the 10 to 15%. There are other companies that we work with that just love trucks. They just treat them like they have a farm. They get a new truck, they keep the old truck, they still spend the money on it, they still register it, they still license it, etc. And they just won't get rid of trucks. And it's a lot of money. It really is. And sometimes it is overkill, especially in this day and age, as I'm sure everyone on this webinar is thinking. You don't even have enough drivers for the trucks anyway, so why are you keeping them? And what can we do using ideas of optimization and efficiency to make sure that if we finally cut off one of those trucks, it wasn't going to affect us at all? And that's something that we're going to be going through on this as well. Okay, how many full-time drivers do you have? Average of 15. Range, 80% range is 7 to 36. So again, if there are some people on here that are much bigger, that's a range. There are people above that. It's a range, meaning there are some people, or as I said, it's the people that work in the office, 2 to 3 people that drive the trucks, and that's it. It does follow to 1. Again, as we said, 80% is at 7 to 36. Seasonal drivers was interesting. What we were really looking for was, when do you bring them on? And I think what we see is the bigger companies stagger, which will make sense because as you're building up how much you do, you certainly need to bring more drivers on exponentially, which is why you're going to stagger in. Some seasonal comes in, another seasonal comes on, well, now you have 2, another comes on, well, now you have 3, etc. Whereas the smaller companies, we typically see they'll bring on their seasonal all at once. The question here, and I know I keep asking questions without answers, but we'll get to them, but when and why? Okay, keep that in mind again. When are you bringing them on? Why are you bringing them on? Is it for the right reason or not? And we'll get to what that means as well. And last, how many residential customers did you deliver to last year? 2,700 to 13,000. It's a big range. The average is 76, 74. And that range, again, interestingly, did not necessarily have to do with size of company. And what I mean by that is, first of all, there are some people that have more commercial, which bring their numbers down. There are people that have more will call, which will bring their numbers up. The other thing that we have seen is, as I said, with nobody wants to get rid of a truck, there are a lot of companies, and that's something that, let Angus help you, let anyone help you, your back office system, etc., with getting rid of who's not really a customer. I'll ask people who's a customer, and their answer is anyone with a delivery within the last 12 months. Okay, good answer. I have other people who say, who's a customer? Anyone I've delivered to since we started the company, and they just never get rid of them. It's not healthy when you're looking at your numbers to have everybody in there, even though they're not a customer. You want to move them to a different area for purposes of marketing, more power to you. But when you're looking at your data and trying to figure out how to make your company more efficient, you need to really understand the amount of customers you have. So these are where the averages are. I think a lot of people that are on this call really do fit into that 80% range all the time. There will be some that are smaller, but that's okay. Understand the numbers work for you as well. Okay, so those were the general questions. How many trucks, how many drivers, how many customers, what's your gallons, etc. Now let's get into some of the other questions which we wanted to help with. So first of all, we asked a general question of what is important to you, issues that your company is dealing with. So we have your answers to the general number of questions. This is what we're going to go through now. And it was interesting to see that most people stayed within what we're showing here. Unpredictable delivery sizes, inability to hire and retain drivers, more than acceptable number of runouts. And we get it. We understand where that's coming from, and certainly hard to find drivers. Everybody's going through that. Unpredictable delivery sizes, again, has a lot to do with what has happened with COVID and has not gone back, or some have gone back to work, some haven't gone back to work. We don't know what they're using. The K is very hard to show. So I get those two, which most people gave. I was surprised to see the word more acceptable number of runouts, right? The percent of runouts, I think with everyone on this call, really hasn't changed in years, if anything, because we do have more data and we do have opportunity to look at our KPIs, et cetera. I don't think it's gone down a little. So I guess my question is, what did everybody mean by what is acceptable and when, right? Acceptable number of runouts, should the answer be 0? Should it be 1%? Should it be 2? I think what they're really saying is that they're worried during the peak season, right? December to early February, some people are late December to late February, when we can't afford any mistakes, right? So they're worried more about that peak time to make sure they don't have that happen to them, along with not saying that in order to get there, I'm going to go down to 140 gallons, 130 gallons of delivery. That would be a big mistake. So that's more what I think people are looking at with runouts, and we'll certainly address the unpredictable delivery sizes and ability to hire and retain drivers as well. Okay, next. Again, under what is important to you. So look at this slide. We said if you could achieve any of the above, how would you manage your staff, operations, and delivery? So I think most of the answers are fairly obvious. You know, the bottom, would you reduce the number of drivers you currently have? Yes, no matter what, right? Of course, because 11th commandment, never fire a driver. We're just too worried about that. Would you stop looking for additional drivers? That's a 50-50. If you can work it out well, that would make sense. Would you delay purchasing a new truck? Again, 50-50, because that kind of makes sense. And in order of importance, go to the higher percentage. Would you take on more automatic customers? 97%. Would you take on more will call customers? 94%. So again, we're not talking about switching an auto to a will call to an auto. Of course, you would take on more customers if you can, if your operation allowed it, if your efficiency allowed it, and if you developed more capacity to be able to do that during the winter. So those make sense, and I like all those answers. Number one was kind of weird. Think about the question. If you could achieve any of the above, how would you manage your staff? So here you're saying you want to take on more customers, you'd keep drivers, you try to keep your trucks down, etc. When we asked, would you continue to operate as you do today, 65% of the people said yes. So that confused us, and I hope it confuses you too, to understand you can't continue doing what you're doing today if you want to develop more efficiency in operation. If you were perfectly efficient and perfectly optimal and everything was good, you probably wouldn't be on this webinar in the first place. So therefore, we need to understand that there are going to be some changes that have to be made. And maybe the answer is, or maybe the question should have been phrased better, that I think everybody here wants to find a way to accomplish these goals with as little operational change as possible, right? We understand that we're going to have to make some changes. We don't want to change behavior too much. We don't want to change our operation too much. I think everyone on the call, and you'll see from some of the stats coming up, are willing to do something. But we want to do as little as possible when it comes to operational and behavioral changes to accomplish those goals. Okay. In addition, if you can choose any of the above, I really did like this slide, and I was actually very impressed with the people that were responding to this, that they said the following. What level of investment would you make? 50 cents to $1 per customer. That's a decent amount of money when you play that back to cents per gallon. And I was very happy to see that people are willing to do that. People are willing to now go to better back office systems so they can really see their data. Our growth in Bright has been phenomenal. Our growth in Adept has been phenomenal also. And I think it has to do with people are willing to spend the money to get that, knowing that their return will be better. How much time would you commit a week? 10 hours per week. That's a lot. That's a lot of time. It's not necessarily your time. It's everybody within the company, but people are willing to spend the time to be trained, to work on it, to develop their charts, to understand what they need to look at every day. Return on investment, what we can do to enter a good opportunity. That was the average. I thought people were going to say, oh, I want to spend money. I want 8 to 10 times my return. People get it. 3 times a return on investment, that's very good. And in certain ways, that's good enough, which is the answers they gave. So I was happy to see they'll spend the money, they'll spend the time. The return on investment has to be good, but not great. We want to make our companies better. And what proof would you need? The perfect answer, data. You need to be able to see it through your data. So yes, it is important. Yes, you do want to act on it, as I said on one of the first slides. And you're willing to spend the money and look at it, which is very nice too. Okay, so if you're willing to spend it, what should you do? What should you be looking at? So this is you, right? How do we get there? Still not sure of this. I'm looking at my notes right now. It's that old question, how do you get to St. Louis? Well, that depends on where you are right now. So I get the joke, but sorry, Phil, I just don't think it's funny. Anyway, so how do we get there? So we need to look at the data and look what's up here, right? Gallons per hour. I speak to clients of ours who during their first few months that they're on Bright, and they say to me, I now see that this driver's averaging X gallons per hour, and this one is averaging X gallons per hour, and this route is doing this and that. I'm like, that's fantastic. What are you doing with it? And they said, I have absolutely no idea what I'm supposed to do with it. So they made it to step 1. They're looking at their data. They're not necessarily acting upon it to make it better. So let's first look at the pieces where you are and then understand what to do. So gallons per hour, we understand is important. Typical truck is on the road about 100 days a year, right? We are not busy during the summer. We are very busy during the winter. You're going to have some, that one truck that's on 200 days. You're going to have the one truck on 7 days. Your typical truck is about 100, okay? Operating expenses is something that everyone's looking at. The typical truck can deliver 1 million gallons a year, right? 4,000 times 250 is 1 million, but it's not on the road for 250 days. 4,000 times 100, which is the number above it, it's about 400,000 gallons. And the typical shift is in that 8 to 9 hour range. And this we saw from the data you gave us. Why is the average over 8? So clearly there is overtime. Is there something we can do about that to shift deliveries over to still be more optimal, and in the same instance not worry so much about overtime? How do you make more money knowing all this information? Okay, so what do we look at? So it's interesting. The pieces that come up most are going to be the gallons per stop, which I think we're used to, and also understanding, as I've been saying over the last couple of slides, the backup truck. And maybe those 2 widgets over here, that plus that equals that, meaning optimizing fleet and staff. And that's what we need to be looking at, right? If you think about it, if you're looking at gallons per stop, what does that even mean, right? We said we're targeting 180. We're averaging 140. We're doing about 4,000 gallons per day per truck. If we actually can get that 140 closer to 180, logic says we're going to be doing 4,500 or 5,000 gallons per truck. If we're doing 4,500 to 5,000 per truck, we clearly don't need as many trucks. Or we're now doing 45 to 5,000, we have extra capacity to actually do more business with the same amount of trucks. Both are good. Both are okay. It's a matter of the direction you want to take, right? Backup trucks, as I said, certain trucks are doing a lot, certain trucks are doing a little. Can we shift deliveries to make our most important truck not do as much all year around and abuse it for a short amount of time, rather abuse it for a longer amount of time and use the other trucks to compensate for that as well? Those are the type of things we want to do. We want to teach you how to look at data to be able to flatten your winter curve, to again, not necessarily need as many backup trucks, which is on the top right, or develop more capacity so that you can actually make more money off of those as well. So that's what I mean by the number of gallons per stop, the number of backup trucks, etc., are going to lead to that. Just a side point on it, when we do work with clients of ours and start showing them how they're doing, pick a number, 30,000 deliveries a year, using the various algorithms that we have, using Bright, etc., we show them that they can do the same thing in 25,000 deliveries and follow the following process in order to get that done. Every so often they're not following the process, and the answer is why? Well, I have drivers sitting around, and I know that you said I may not need as many, but I'm not doing anything yet, and I want to keep them busy. No, that's not necessarily the answer. You dispatch a truck, it's costing you $700 every time you dispatch that truck. If you add up the cost of the driver, overtime, his insurance, etc., his share of the dispatcher, the cost of the truck, the amortization of the truck, the cost of the diesel under the truck. Oh my God, you guys are spending about $1 per mile to drive a truck, etc., etc. By not sending him out, yes, you're still paying the driver, but you're also not necessarily using the truck as much as you want and optimizing how much you spend to run your business. So we need to balance those two against each other to understand, you know, the joke of what should I do with my driver if they're not on the road? Teach them to play chess. Very funny, but you can't just have them on the road for the sake of having them on the road. I do have clients of mine now who have invested in our Gremlin tank monitors, and for that matter with other companies' monitors, and they are teaching their drivers how to install the monitors. It's not that difficult, and it gives them the opportunity that when we are optimizing their fleet, and therefore the driver isn't necessarily on the road the whole time, but they want to keep the driver, teach them other things to do. It's going to make you that much more efficient, and for that matter, if you spend less money on developing your customers with tank monitors, well, that's a good thing too, and it can be contributed to the fact that you learned how to optimize your fleet and staff. So a lot of different ideas of what to do. Keep those in mind as well. So these are what we did with a lot of our clients. You know, how do you get there? You really do look at your data. And we took all this information from clients of ours, you know, just to give you an idea of a real case. We do for our customers very often what's called a delivery efficiency study. And it really does look at what is their average delivery, what is their standard deviation away from their delivery, I'll get to that in a second, and where they stand and what can they do to get better. And it's very interesting how most of the clients that we have will follow what you're seeing here. If they're averaging 140, they're not having, if you can see my mouse, a 140 where they have nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, and boom, they go all the way up at 140 and down. No, it's really all over the place. There's a large percentage that are way below 140. Read it, right? Meaning a standard deviation further away from your average. Not as many going up. Obviously, there's always more going down. And there are two things that we have to work on with them. Number one, to make sure wherever their average is, make sure most of them are around the average. And then number two, shift it over to bring in more gallons per delivery. So, and again, many times when we do the study, they're going to say the number's going to show 160, we show 140. It's a good thing to see it, whether it's a good or bad number for you. You want to see where your base is. Where have you started? What is going on? And then we take this information that we got from them about the deliveries, about the size, about the tanks, about when they did the deliveries, when they sent them out, what their drivers did, how many hours their drivers were on, et cetera, and we do a driver performance report for them to see what they did, the average hours worked, the average units per stop by month, et cetera. And I'm really not going to go through this part. There's a lot of data on here, which we're happy to do for all the companies. I'm sure you have a lot of people you work with that can do it themselves. Why am I showing this? Really to get to the following, okay, where we see that when the numbers come out, the typical company is spending about $65 per delivery, or more important, they're spending 39 cents per gallon delivered. And I want to just quickly explain what I mean by more important. The reason I say that is the dollars per delivery is a number that can be played with. And it is a good thing to look at, but you have to be careful. Because, for example, if somebody has $3 million worth of expenses and they're doing 50,000 deliveries, that would mean they're spending $60 per delivery. I can easily get that $60 down by, instead of doing 50,000 deliveries, I do 55,000 deliveries, and all of a sudden I got down to $57 per delivery. I made myself less efficient. I didn't do it the right way, but I fooled myself into thinking I'm doing better. So I don't necessarily like using that when you're looking at your data to understand your efficiency. You cannot play around with 39 cents per gallon delivered. The only way to get that number down is if you're going to be more efficient, meaning you're developing more deliveries with the same amount of expenses by adding capacity, or by bringing the number of trucks or drivers, etc., down. You're developing a more efficient way to run the company, which will bring that 39 cents per gallon delivered down as well. So there are ways to look at it. Certainly, that's something that you should be thinking about to understand where your base is right now and what you need to do to bring that base down. So, as I said, the numbers below here that I covered pretty quickly, looking at all that stuff, we look at this for our clients and then develop from them to really understand what we would need to do using some softwares that we have. Again, mostly through Bright and Adept. It's not a seminar for those two products of ours, but using those to get them down to where they should be to be able to save those deliveries or develop capacity. And I'll give you one example over here, a real case that we had with a client of ours where we did a comparison, right? You see on the top left over here that we compared January 20 to January 22, company that we started working with back then. Just to compare, they did 6,631 deliveries in the month of January in 22, and in January of 20, and in January of 22, they did 6,315 working with these optimization tools that we gave them. Now, it looks like they saved 5% of the deliveries. It was a hell of a lot more than that, because look at what you're seeing here, right? Look at the difference in the years. In January of 2020, they only delivered 1.4 million with those 6,631 deliveries because it was a warm January. 820 heating degree days in January, not fun. We don't like seeing those numbers. Whereas in 2022, it was a cold January, 1,048 heating degree days. Therefore, they delivered a lot more because people needed more oil. So if you play with the math, I'm certainly not going to give you a lesson as my wife, the math teacher, would do, but suffice it to say, really what they saved between this time, if you take the 1,048 compared to the 820, is they saved 2,174, over 2,000 deliveries during that time. That's wild, right? Because normalize this 6631 in this year would have been 8,489 deliveries because of how much colder it was, yet they only did 6,315. That's fantastic. That's really a good number to know because, as I said to you before, using the number of approximately $700 per dispatch, 20 or so deliveries per dispatch, etc. In the month of January, compared to 2 years ago, they saved $76,000. A lot of money. Okay, what is this number down here of the 434,000? So again, as I said, maybe instead of saving the 2,174 deliveries, maybe the company decided, I got a lot more room. And in a very cold winter, typically what you see is someone calls you and says, hi, I hate my present company, they won't deliver to me tomorrow. And your answer typically is, well, we're not delivering to you tomorrow either. It's cold outside, we're busy too. This is an opportunity to develop that capacity and use it for marketing purpose to say, no, we do have extra capacity, even though it's cold outside. We do want to deliver to you, but we only want to deliver to you if you guarantee us the deliveries for the season. If you go to automatic, if you're a will call, but you order it online. There are many different ways to do it, but the capacity is there. That's what we're trying to say. Lots of money to be saved by saving your deliveries, lots of room for extra revenue to develop, and that revenue will interpret to a fairly good net profit as well. Okay, so again, going back to what I said before, your goals were to develop better efficiency, to understand how to be more optimal, and you are willing to spend the money, and you should. I think, as we said, whoever thought that we would, over the last 5 to 10 years, which you see from a lot of our clients, spend $50 to $100,000 or more on developing a better back office system? Who thought that we would spend money on technology in the truck to make sure that you do a delivery and what you did is in the office in 1 second? And who thought you would spend money on developing, using systems that will help you understand efficiency, that will help you pull your data faster and quicker and be able to use it more? And the answer is that you did, and you're willing to do it and you're willing to play with it, which I think is great. However, as we said in that slide about not wanting to change, you do have to be careful to do this where you're not necessarily changing behaviors that much. And we at Angus believe that you can do it. Certainly with looking on a day-to-day basis at Bright, working with how to dispatch better through things like Adept or through your back office systems, there will be some changes, but honestly, the change in behavior to the driver, the change in behavior to the dispatcher, I don't think it's a lot. What we see is when there is a 65, 70-year-old dispatcher who's been there forever and says, I don't understand, I always deliver it to Mrs. Jones on the second Wednesday in October. Why isn't she on my list today? And the answer is because we've developed a better way to deliver to be more efficient. Don't worry about Mrs. Jones, she's going to be fine. Those type of things might be small behavioral changes, but mainly if you work it the right way, how you dispatch and deliver should not change the behavior too much, but it certainly will make you better. And I think the way to bring that up to the staff, to the drivers, to the dispatchers, to the inside people, etc., a good example would be what we said is you're driving, I use Waze, I'm not sure if people use Google Maps, etc., but you're driving using Waze. And I need to get from someplace to my house. And you'll typically, if you go into routing, you go down and say, route, what are my choices? And there's going to be a route where you spend an hour and 7 minutes to get back, and you go straight on the highway, but there's a lot of traffic. Or you can spend an hour and 1 minute, but you'll go on all these different side roads, making a right, a left, all the time. Which is better? So it's always an interesting question. If you want to optimize your time, the answer is do all those side roads and get there in 6 minutes faster. The question is, every so often, I might say to myself, I need to optimize as much as I can because I need to get home. Take all those side roads. There are other times where we all agree you're going to say, you know something, I don't want to concentrate on the drive. I'm willing to take the extra 6 minutes because I just don't want to think about all those turns. So both of them are right, but I think we would all agree we're not going to take that hour and 7 minute trip every day, because 6 minutes times 365 days, if you're traveling that same road, is a lot of minutes, a lot of hours. We need to pick and choose our battles. We need to understand which times the most optimal way is the right way, which times developing the behavioral changes of our staff, etc., will be within something they can handle as time goes on. So play with all of them, right? It says over here, how much time are you willing to spend? 10 hours a week. Use that time wisely. What are you going to use? Data. Use the data wisely to show them. Don't just say to staff, this is the way we're going to do it because the data showed us that this is the best way to do it, whether you like it or not. No, show them the data. Let them understand why you invested in these products to make the efficiency better, which will be better for their jobs as well. So use this information, the goals that you said, to run your business as best you can with keeping everyone happy as well, right? So to sum it up, as we said, again, one of those questions of which is better, right? Doing the same with less or doing more with the same. These are things that I think most companies will be in between. By developing these efficiencies, you can absolutely do the same with spending less money. Or you're developing capacity, so you can do more with spending the same. There's no answer to the question to which one is better. If there's opportunity to use that capacity to make the company bigger and more efficient, To be able to acquire another small company and not take on any of their trucks, fantastic. As some clients of mine who have worked on us with optimization and efficiency, one client of ours that went on to Adept, his reason was, did not want to work on Saturdays anymore. You can laugh at that, but it's very interesting that using the exact same staff, people, trucks, etc., they went to a 5-day operation from a 6-day operation. To me, that's optimization, because in his mind, that was the important thing. So there's a lot of different directions to go with capacity versus savings of deliveries. Use them both to make sure that you are doing what is best for you. Okay. So again, as we said, it really is, we started with, it's all about you. As it says on the bottom here, it's about your data, your capacity, etc. Right? Going from one size fits all models to an automated and customized process for each of you. Right? We said you're the same as other companies every so often. You're different than others at times. Right? So the most efficient operation for your business, it's going to take several steps, not the least of which is willingness and ability to let decades-old procedures go to the wayside. We need to move forward with the information we have, and there's so much there to make sure that we are going to be okay. And with that, I will certainly take questions. And I think we do have some time, Ted.
We do. Thank you, Danny. For anyone that joined us late here after 9 a.m., again, just a reminder, you can ask questions via the question feature and go to webinar. Danny, we have not had any come in here throughout the course of your presentation, so I'm going to give it 30 seconds before we wrap up. But on my end, Danny, would just like to thank Angus, thank yourself for just the insight and perspective that you provided here today. Hopefully everyone that joined us here this morning is going to walk away with a couple of different takes in terms of perspective here moving forward. So,
and Danny, I will just add, if I have a minute, then I will add one thing, because Ted, I had said when we spoke before, I just want everyone to keep in mind also when we're talking about this idea of optimization and efficiency, and sometimes you do the best you can, sometimes you can't. One example, which you really should be speaking to consultants that you work with at this time, is we are all going through basis issues again. I think we're all seeing that our racks are all of a sudden, instead of a penny or two above the harbor, they're 50, 60 cents above the harbor, and prices are going back up. And I'm not saying this is a political announcement of good or bad, but we're going to need to deal, which possibly will be again as we did in April and May, but in a much busier season of December, January, of do we have enough oil even being given to us by our rack, right? A lot of people have run out and said, come back to me tomorrow. And number two, as efficient as you want to be, can the customer afford it? And there are a lot of different ways to take to understand what to do there and how to divvy it out while still optimizing as much as possible. So a whole new wrench just came in, as it did in April and May of last year. And I do recommend that, give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about it, but speak to people that you consult with and making sure that you keep that piece in mind. I hope it goes away tomorrow. I think we all know it's not going to. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. From an association perspective, we're certainly here. We're obviously very aware of what's happening within the marketplace, not just in Pennsylvania, but throughout the Northeast. Please continue to make myself and the association aware of some of the challenges that you're running into from a supply perspective. But I think Danny is unfortunately spot on. I think we all know that this is going to be a challenging winter, and the more that you can utilize data and technology available to you, I think it's now is more important than ever to do that. So, Danny, we got nothing that came in here. Your information's on the screen in terms of contact information. I encourage anyone, if you do have questions for Danny in regards to anything he covered or for the other products that Angus offers as a company, please reach out to him. They've been in this space for, I think, what, Danny, 25 plus years, and bring a lot of expertise. So please use them as a resource. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Danny, thank you again to you and Angus for the insight and for your time. I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you.